Hi class. I wanted to make this brief video in order to help you with the discussion board questions. If you look at the directions, it's asking you to write a paragraph response for each question. And although I've already done so through an announcement, I wanted to again kind of give you an example of how to write an analytic paragraph, which will help you do well on our discussion boards and on our paper. So this is a PowerPoint, so bear with me as I kind of click through things. So the way to write the perfect analytic paragraph is to write the Paraburger. Maybe you've heard of this before, maybe it's new to you, but I'm going to review it anyway. So to begin with, we have a topic sentence, evidence, analysis, and a wrap-up. And all these different parts of the paragraph have different jobs to do. So the topic sentence job in a body paragraph is to make an arguable claim. By arguable claim, I mean something that we need to prove, something that we can debate. So this is different, a claim is different than a fact. So a fact would be an example of Professor Kaiserman is my professor, the sky is blue. Certainly, if we wanted to be contentious, we could argue about that, but anybody could just simply look at the syllabus, look, his name is Professor Kaiserman, look up into the sky, it's blue. We don't need to have a debate about that. A claim is something that we need to debate. It can become a fact, but we need to prove it. The other thing that the topic sentence does is controls the paragraph. It says what that paragraph is going to be about. And it says that nothing else is going to be in this paragraph. So you want to think of having one idea to one paragraph. One paragraph equals one idea. If you have two ideas in a paragraph, that is a sign that you have paragraph unity problems. And it either means that you need to get that second idea out of there, or you have a fully developed idea and you've got two of them, and they just need to be separated. You just need to cut the paragraph in half. You need to separate it like conjoined twins. And then sometimes you have a fully developed idea, and then you have like part of another thing there, and it's sort of like an unformed conjoined twin. It's just like some teeth poking out of the ear, and you need to cut that off and put it in a jar and save it somewhere. And if it's a really good idea, it's just undeveloped, then you need to like further nurture it and develop it so that it can be a full person. As the metaphor goes. So again, it needs to make an arguable claim, it needs to control the paragraph, and in terms of our discussion boards, it needs to answer that question directly. You're also going to need evidence. Evidence in the humanities is going to come from a text, something that you're studying, whether that be a history, a collection of poems, even a film. You'll need to cite or quote or describe it. So you must quote, cite, and you must begin with a signal phrase, something that lets your reader know where this quotation is coming from. Otherwise, we call that a floating quotation. And that's a quotation that's unattended. So the metaphor that I like to use is, I have a 3-year-old son, and if we go out somewhere, I hold his hand because I don't want him to run off and get lost. I wouldn't leave him unattended. And that's what a signal phrase does. It just attends to that quote, make sure that it's safe. We also have analysis. This is the meat of the Paraburger. It's the most important part. Otherwise, it's not a burger. And the analysis must explain how the above evidence proves your claim. It's the most important part again. And the wrap-up ties everything together, makes it neat. So let's take an example. Let's take an imaginary question. So imagine that you were reading Exit West by Mohsen Hamid, and I asked you this question. Early in the novel, Hamid breaks up the story. He leaves his two central characters, Nadia and Saeed, and instead narrates an incident in Australia where a refugee goes through this magical portal, looks around a woman's house, and then leaves. Why does he do this? Right? Narratively, that's a weird thing. You usually stick with your main characters. So let's review the part of the passage so that we have some context here. Her home was alarmed, but the alarm was not active. It had been installed by previous occupants, by others who had once called this place home, before the phenomenon referred to as the gentrification of this neighborhood had run as far as it had now run. The sleeping woman used the alarm only sporadically, mostly when her husband was absent. But on this night, she had forgotten. Her bedroom, 4 meters above the ground, was open, just a slit. In the drawer of her bedside table were a full packet of birth control pills, last consumed 3 months ago, when she and her husband were still trying not to conceive, passports, checkbooks, receipts, coins, keys, a pair of handcuffs, and a few paper wrap sticks of unchewed chewing gum. He too was dark, with dark skin and dark woolly hair. He wriggled with great effort, his hands gripping either side of the doorway as though pulling himself up against gravity or against the rush of a monstrous tide. His neck following his head, tendons straining, and then his chest, his half unbuttoned, sweaty gray and brown shirt. Suddenly, he paused in his exertions. Moving along a little bit further in the passage, the woman who slept, slept alone. He who stood above her stood alone. The bedroom door was shut. The window was open. He chose the window. He was through in an instant, dropping skillfully through to the street below. Okay, so let's review this question. Early in the novel, Hamid breaks up the story. He leaves his two central characters, Nadia and Saeed, and instead narrates an incident in Australia where a refugee goes through a magical portal, looks around a woman's house, and then leaves. Why does he do this? So here's my answer. It's a little longer probably than your paragraphs are going to be. Mohsen Hamid includes this narrative interlude in order to dispel racist Western assumptions about refugees. To do so, Hamid both attempts to raise our concern for the Australian woman and then dispel those concerns. Hamid begins by making the woman sound vulnerable. We know that the woman is alone and that her home is alarmed, but the alarm was not active. We also know that she is vulnerable to rape and, with that, pregnancy. Among other things, her nightstand contains unused birth control pills and handcuffs. After Hamid focuses on the woman's vulnerability, he then focuses on the refugee's race. The first things we learn about him are that he has dark skin and dark woolly hair, and is most likely from Africa. This emphasis on the woman's vulnerability and the man's race revives entrenched racist assumptions about the vulnerability of white womanhood and the criminal carnality of Black men. However, Hamid dispels these fears quickly when the man simply leaves the bedroom without incident. The narrative tension that he has raised dissipates, and possibly the reader is left wondering why they felt so fearful in the first place. As such, this interlude allows Hamid to interrogate his Western audience's preconceived notions about refugees. So let's break this down. My topic sentence is this. Mohsen Hamid includes this narrative interlude in order to dispel racist assumptions about refugees. And then I have a kind of clarifying sentence, which you may or may not need. To do so, Hamid both attempts to raise our concern for the Australian woman and then dispel those concerns. So further clarifies what I'm trying to say. Evidence. I have a lot of evidence here because I'm pulling from a lot of different parts of the passage. You may only have one quotation, and that's fine. But here's an example of me integrating a lot of different evidence. Hamid begins by making the woman sound vulnerable. We know that the woman is alone and that her home is alarmed, but the alarm is not active. We also know that she is vulnerable to rape and with that pregnancy. Among other things, her nightstand contains unused birth control pills and handcuffs. After Hamid focuses on the woman's vulnerability, he then focuses on the refugee's race. The first thing we learn about him are that he has dark skin and dark woolly hair and is most likely from Africa. So you can see the parts that I'm quoting are there, but also that I'm making sure I'm integrating it into my own language, but also very carefully setting up the quotations so that the reader can follow along. I think even you guys who haven't read Exit West would be able to tell what's going on here. And that's really your goal, right? For someone who doesn't already know. Our last bit is analysis. The emphasis on the woman's vulnerability and the man's race revives entrenched racist assumptions about the vulnerability of white womanhood and the criminal carnality of Black men. However, Hamid dispels these fears quickly when the man simply leaves the bedroom without incident. The narrative tension that he has raised dissipates, and possibly the reader is left wondering why they felt so fearful in the first place. So here I go on to explain why that evidence just above proves my claim. Finally, the wrap-up. It just ties everything in a nice little bud. As such, this interlude allows Hamid to interrogate his Western audience's preconceived notions about refugees. So you see, by making that format, I've made it very clear for my reader, and I'm trying to convince them that my analysis is correct. And so this is going to be the basic paragraph format that we have for this semester. The faster and quicker you adopt it, the higher your scores are going to be for the discussion board and ultimately for our final paper as well. So that's it for now. If you have questions, please let me know.